You guys should both turn off your fans. You should do the sweat lodge thing with me, and we'll start to have visions. That'll be the best episode ever.
It is indeed the Friday night, the 9th of August, and we are recording early because one of the three of us is disappearing for a week again. But after this, we should actually be recording on a regular schedule. And everyone keeps bemoaning the fact that our schedule changes a lot, and I don't really blame them. And people will ask, well, why don't you have the schedule on the website? And the problem is 99% of the time, it's Wednesdays at 9 Eastern U.S. time.
Well, that's not entirely true because we're only 25 episodes in, 26 now. And there's been a lot more than, a quarter of one episode that's been non-scheduled properly.
You know what I mean.
That's the default. Wednesday at 9 is the default.
That is the default.
Yes. So when it's not the summertime and when everyone's not going on crazy vacations all the time, well, at least when two of the three hosts aren't going on crazy vacations all the time, then...
Your life is a crazy vacation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
The chat room wants me to comment. Thank you from Apollozac in the chat room. Wants me to comment on the beta Instapaper web redesign. Do you guys see this yet? I linked to it earlier today.
I saw that it existed. I haven't looked at it, and
right,
you know
so
what? We haven't had.
There's a topic.
We haven't had enough reviews telling us that this is the Marco show. So
I know, really.
Let's keep going.
Well, look, you guys aren't helping me out right now.
But
Here's something we can talk
This has nothing to do with Marco. This is somebody else's product now.
This is the first time that I don't have a new app to announce on the show in weeks.
Oh, look at me. I'm Marco. I'm so smart.
I'll start writing one now. By the end, you'll have something.
I was writing one earlier today.
Another new one?
No, the big one. I've been working on it. I've had a very solid week working on it, doing a whole lot of low level stuff. And
I thought you were done with the low level stuff.
Well, there's more. I was done with part of it.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, so Instapaper beta.
Yeah. I knew they were moving everything to AWS. And now looking at what they've done, they've been doing a heck of a lot more than that. And I'm really happy to see this. I mean, this was way faster than I expected for this level of work. And so they unveiled today a beta that's, I would say, about, it looks on the surface, I haven't had that much time to poke around with it, but it looks like it's probably about 2/3 done, and or 3/4 done even. And it is really, really good. And it's just the web interface right now. They say updates for the apps are coming, and I believe them because I see this and they really delivered. I mean, this is really good. And the web interface, as I wrote in my little post about it, the web interface was always my biggest embarrassment about Instapaper because I knew it was terrible. It looked terrible. It worked pretty poorly. But not only am I a terrible web designer in most cases, but I also was not motivated to ever improve it because, the short version is all the money was in iOS. And I always used iOS. And so for something that made very little money directly with just the web interface, and a web interface that I hardly ever saw, I just was not motivated to really ever improve it. And that's one of the problems when you have a one-person company. One of the problems is, like, if that one person isn't that interested in working on something, it generally doesn't get done. And so now it's multiple people doing what's right for the product and what's great for everybody instead of just what they want to work on. And it's really looking good. What do you guys think?
I think it looks good. I will say I can only imagine how much of, I can't think of a better word than a relief or perhaps a vindication that this is the first major change that I'm aware of to Instapaper since you sold it. And how good must that make you feel that you now have a data point that says they're not going to ruin it? And I not to say that I expected BetaWorks to, but now you have empirical evidence that says they're not going to ruin it. And in fact, it's already getting better. And that's got to make you feel, pardon the really bad pun, but like $1 million. It must make you feel really good that this is already trending up.
Oh, totally. Because, before, when I was selling it, when I was in the process of selling it, I thought, I talked about this on the show, so I'm not going to go into too much depth here, but I thought the worst that can happen really is that they neglect it. But I'm neglecting it, and I've been neglecting it for like a year or two, so, the worst that can happen is that they just keep neglecting it. So it's not that bad, because obviously I've been neglecting it for a while and it's been okay. And And now this is concrete evidence that they're not just neglecting it. So like that was the worst case scenario. Now, yeah, you're right. It has everywhere to go now. It's going to go up. That doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? Apply the appropriate metaphor, please.
Right, John. Would you like to absolutely destroy it now that we've both been talking positively about it?
I didn't mind the old web interface that much. Like it wasn't anything nice to look at. Like it was just there and didn't really have much pizzazz or style, but it did what it was supposed to do. I use the web interface a surprising amount because there's a lot of stuff that I would Instapaper were things that either I didn't want to watch on a phone or couldn't watch on an iPad because they involved Flash, or it was like a 1080p trailer for a movie and I wanted to see it on my big screen. And so I did spend a lot of time with the web interface, and it's just showing me a bunch of links. The only thing that really annoyed me about the web interface were encoding problems, where you get like the little A with the hat on capital A with a hat on top of it or something when you have a double encoded UTF-8 thing that's poorly escaped, but you never know whose fault that is. I think I complained about it to Marco a couple of times, but other than that,
it was in the title, right?
I don't remember. Yeah, probably in the title. But the new web interface is nice. It's a little bit like if you can kind of see, I don't know which technologies they're using, but like, those look like, I wonder if they use Bootstrap for that, and I think I've seen that icon set before, and but all the animations are nice, all the interface is nice, and the fact that Instapaper's look was kind of black and white, it's I'm not going to say it's easy for them to come up with a new design, but they didn't have to do all sorts of like lavish graphics and custom images of wood at high resolution for, all the sorts of things. Like if that had been Instapaper's style, it would have been, been more difficult. Here they could go with a straightforward design with nice typography with black on white, and it totally fits with the brand. So I give thumbs up to the web thing. I give it thumbs down to all the instability that has gone on since you sold this thing. I don't know if it's because of the AWS move or whatever, but I've hit read later or tapped it or held down on it or done it in the umpteen different places that I do it and gotten, either a really, really, really long pause or a timeout or a service is not available way more between the time you sold it and now than the entire rest of the history of Instapaper. I'm assuming it's because they were moving into AWS, but that made me sad. Like if I'm reading something and Instapaper is down, even if it's down for 5 minutes, now I got to remember 5 minutes from now to come back and, hit the same link. So I hope they get through that instability and we can get back up to the old Marco level of stability, which it was very rarely down and only occasionally slow.
Yeah, I haven't really asked them about that. I've only hit a problem like once in this time, and maybe it's just because like when we're hitting them, I don't know. I would imagine one of the differences among us is that you probably wake up a lot earlier than I do, and so that might put you in like a different usage zone. But yeah, I've only hit a couple of problems, or like one problem over the whole course of it. But as far as I know, it's problems like that are probably because they were moving it to AWS, and that's. I mean, I'm really surprised how quickly they were able to do that move and how well it's gone, because like so much of when I'm running servers is about knowing like the intricate details of exactly how much I can get away with performance-wise in certain characteristics or on certain servers or in certain software. And by shifting things to AWS, you dramatically change the foundation of what everything is. Like the assumptions you've made about characteristics. Like my database servers were mostly SSDs. As far as I know, AWS still doesn't offer that, do they?
Oh, I wouldn't know.
I don't know either, but certainly I know that if they do offer it, it probably isn't simple or maybe complete. But so like I would make assumptions like, all right, well, this server is going to always have at least this much RAM. This server is going to always be 64-bit. This server is going to always have really fast disks, and this one's always going to have tons of CPU cores. And so I was making all those assumptions all that time, and to shift it to a system that works completely differently is a heck of a thing to do. And I also had I think about 11 servers when I sold it, and those were 11 pretty high-end servers. The number of AWS instances required to replace them has to be more than that. And so like that, I can't even imagine the scale of the work that is. And the reason they did it was because they host all their stuff on AWS, so they know it really, really well. And so that's a very good reason to do it. But I think it really shows how good they are that they were able to do that kind of move so with so little downtime, really, for what that is. I mean, moving to not only a different host, like moving all of your servers to a different host. Not only that, but moving them to a different type of host. That's a big job.
The search still doesn't work in the beta 2. It just gives a 502 error, so something's not hooked up there. But the search works in the old one, so it's not like search is down entirely.
I don't know if this is accurate or not. Somebody on Twitter said that they're rewriting it in Python. And I know like somebody had mentioned the possibility of that to me once, and I said, yeah, do whatever you want, I don't care. But they might be doing that also. Like I haven't even asked them again because I don't really care, honestly. Haven't really asked them, but that might be part of this. Like maybe the beta is all a Python engine, and the old site is still running the old PHP code. I don't know. Certainly, I don't have any problem with that because I respect Python as a language. I don't know it very well, but I've always said that if I was going to learn another web scripting language today, it would probably be Python. So yeah, good for them. I think it's working really well.
And Instapaper is like a small enough application that it's not crazy to think of rewriting it because like how many screens and how many features it has, and it's hidden behind like an API, like a web interface. So as long as you maintain the same sort of HTTP endpoints and the same protocol between them, and they're redoing the native apps anyway. But the point is like it's small enough that I feel like if they had a team who knows how to use these technologies well, and they're like, I know exactly how I do Instapaper and how I would shard everything and how I would, implement all the different services. And there's like 4 things you can do with it. You can read later. You got a text parser. You got this. You got that. Like, there's enough pieces where you can hold it all in your head. It's not like somebody said, I'm going to rewrite this operating system in Java. It's not that level of undertaking. So I think it's a reasonable thing for them to do, especially if that's what they have the expertise in. If they've already staffed up to do that.
Exactly. And you're right. I mean, the web code base, the way I handed it off, the web code base is really, really simple. And in fact, I handed it off in kind of a messy state because I was kind of halfway transitioned between 2 text parsers. So there was like the old one and the new one both coexisting in various different places, and it was kind of a mess. So I sorry to anyone over there if you're listening, if you had to clean that up. But yeah, I mean, the web code base really is not that complicated, and so if they they can rewrite it in whatever they want, and it's not really that big of a deal. The iOS app, of course, is where most of the code is, but you can't rewrite that in anything else except, I guess, Xamarin. What is that?
C Sharp.
Yep.
C Sharp. Yes.
It's good times. It's funny hearing you guys say that, oh, yeah, you can rewrite it, no problem, because I keep flashing back to Spolsky's article from years and years ago about rewriting something and how no matter how simple you think it will be, it always ends up being a terrible disaster. And I'm hugely paraphrasing, of course, but it keeps reminding me of that. And the other thing I keep wondering or thinking to myself is, and I don't know if this is a worthwhile topic or not, but at what point do you choose familiarity over anything else? So in other words, they may be more familiar with AWS and Python, but no matter how you slice it, BetaWorks bought something that was successful and functional. And is familiarity more important to their team, which it appears it is, or is keeping what works more important? And I wrestle with this a lot when I write code, and you can also extrapolate this to be, is writing code in a clear way better than writing code in a clever and perhaps, maybe not succinct is the best word, but if you could take a 150-line function, let's say, and do some really clever stuff and get it down to 50 lines, but it's a lot harder to understand, is that really a net win or not? And to me, as the older I get, the more I think, familiarity really is important and really is worth fighting for. And I've found that I'm using less clever tricks in my code than I would have in the past because I don't know if I'm going to remember what it was I was thinking in a month, let alone a coworker have any idea what I was doing in a week. I don't know if you guys have anything interesting to add to that, but
when you're buying like a company or a product or whatever, like, if you have the intention to go forward with that product, to make new versions of that product, to add features and everything, you have to make sure that you have the ability to do that. So if you buy something in PHP and Objective-C, and you have nobody who knows PHP and Objective-C and nobody who knows iOS APIs, well, A, that was probably not a great idea to purchase that, but B, like, you need to do one of two things. Either get people with those expertise or change it to something that your people already have expertise in. And like Marco said, with the iOS app, they're going to get people who are familiar with iOS, or they probably already have them. Like, you can't change the language, basically. Maybe they could change it to C# or something like that, but in general, that decision is made for them. We bought an iOS app. We got to make sure we have people who understand the iOS APIs, and they probably already do, so we're good there. And on the website, they bought something that was written in PHP, but like I said, it was small enough and simple enough that it's not that big a deal. They could get expertise in PHP and go forward and enhance the application in PHP, but I bet they already have people who know how to do web stuff in Python really well. And it's, they have to do something so that the people, so that they can add features and enhance this application. And it's probably more efficient for them to rewrite the whole thing in Python, because they have like an army of people who know Python, and they think they can rewrite it really quickly because they like Marco does. Like, he's got his framework for web applications and stuff like that. He's got a box of tools in PHP, so when it comes time for him to do something on the web, it's much faster for him to just take out his toolbox with these tools that he's worked on, and put something together. So they probably have a toolbox full of Python things, and they're familiar with various Python frameworks, and they have their own in-house things or whatever. So like, oh, I know exactly how I do Instapaper. I do with this, that, and the other thing, and it's small enough that they can do it. The Joel article was kind of one of those things where he wanted to explain all the reasons why you might not want to rewrite something, and he did, and I think he explained them pretty well. But as time goes on and memories fade or whatever, it becomes like, oh, that's the article where he said you should never, ever, ever rewrite anything. Which, of course, any sort of absolutist position, like you should always rewrite or never rewrite, is not going to be, people are going to argue with it, and that's going to be the straw man that they're going to disagree with. I think he did a good job of highlighting why, like, the value in old code, but every situation is different, and you have to decide, given your situation and the parameters and the requirements that are put upon you and what you actually want to do going forward, what you're going to do. And so the thing I think he used an example was Netscape being rewritten to become Mozilla and everything. Mm-hmm. And first of all, no one's thinking, oh, Netscape, this is a simple application. Like, that won't be hard to rewrite, right? Web browsers, those aren't complicated, right? That'll be no problem. Like, they knew that it was complicated, but, with 2020 hindsight, you can say, look, that code base, that old Netscape code base, was not going anywhere. It was basically going to be a dead end. It would not exist today, no matter how much work they put into it. And even though there was tremendous value in, like, look at all the stuff we debugged, and look at, all those little tricky things we did to make sure that it worked with weird, mail servers, because there was a mail client built into it, and how it worked with NNTP, and had all these nuances of talking to news servers and dealing with the web as it existed in 1993. All that stuff had value, but the value by now is either gone or pointless, because the web browsing engine world has gone so far. And if they hadn't rewritten it, they would be completely irrelevant now. And as it stands, they probably are due for another rewrite or something, because their engine, Gecko and Mozilla and everything, is kind of like looking like the old grandfather next to WebKit and Blink and all these fancy new things. So, people saying, now, Joel, you wrote that article, but look, if they hadn't rewritten everything, they'd be completely irrelevant. And they're almost irrelevant now, even though they did rewrite everything. So, there's a time. The time comes when you need to cut your losses and move on. But I think the value in that article is explaining why old code has good qualities that you might not see when all you could see is how disgusting it is and how you wish you could rewrite it all.
Oh yeah, I mean, like there's definitely like a very common programmer immaturity that you see where like a programmer is assigned to take over a project, whether they were hired in like as like a new lead on it, or they're looking at someone else's code who was previously there. Almost always, young programmers want to rewrite it their way, and that's generally a pretty immature and inefficient position to take. Because it's easier for you to start poking around and say, oh, this whole thing is a mess. This is not going to work. It's terrible. This previous person who wrote this was an idiot, and we got to rewrite everything from scratch. And you're right. Like in the real world, like the Joel article is pretty good advice most of the time. Obviously, there's exceptions to everything. The example he used of Netscape was, of course, a very extreme example. Netscape is was a tremendous code base, it's absolutely tremendous, doing so many things, and so obviously rewriting that was a pretty big ordeal. rewriting a pretty simple web service that doesn't do a whole lot on the web service end is not that hard. And so, I wrote Instapaper, the first version, in like one night, and built on it from there part time. But the website was never really a big time suck. So rewriting that is very, very different from rewriting Netscape.
So 2 quick questions for you in a very qualitative and off the cuff way. Would you say that it seems clear that the Instapaper website you would say is not very complex? And I'm thinking mostly about the text parser. That strikes me as though it would be pretty complex, but it seems to me like you're waving it off as not that bad. Is that fair to say?
The text parser really isn't that bad. It's really not that complex. You would be surprised how easy it is to do a pretty good job parsing out body text.
All right, and then with that in mind, how much code smell would you say the code base had? Like you said, you were half-baked between a major rewrite, and that obviously induces a little bit of stench, if you will. But would you say that generally speaking, it was in pretty good shape aside from that?
The text parser was in bad shape, but everything else was pretty solid, as far as I remember. Honestly, I spent so little time working on the website, I barely even remember the code. But yeah, it was...
We can tell.
Yeah. One other direction I want to take this conversation briefly is there was this great article, I pasted the link in the chat room a few lines ago, by James Haig, and I'll put a link in the show notes. And it's called Organizational Skills Beat Algorithmic Wizardry. And he was first talking about all the crap about brain teaser tech interviews, which are terrible. And then he has this one line that I love. When it comes to writing code, the number one most important skill is how to keep a tangle of features from collapsing under the weight of its own complexity. And he goes on to say, to a great extent, the act of coding is one of organization, refactoring, simplifying, figuring out how to remove extraneous manipulations here and there. And that's a fantastic bit of wisdom there, because so many times what makes me want to rewrite parts of my own code or modules or even entire apps, which is pretty rare, but what makes me want to rewrite stuff like that is tricks and optimizations and complexities that I implemented forever ago and have since forgotten how they work. And it's like you're competing with yourself from the future when you're writing code, and it's really, really easy to you see something here that we could do this cool little thing if we just add this little bit of complexity here, this little weird hack here that it's not pretty, but it'll work and it'll achieve this cool thing. Well, then 6 months from now, you get to that, you see that, and you see, I don't know how this works. This thing's a mess. We got to rewrite the whole thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Casey's question from before about doing clever things in code or whatever, I think most programmers go through that phase of where you don't understand the clever thing, then you do understand the clever things, then you start to invent your own clever things. I try to get myself away from looking at the code at that level, because what I found is that the most important question I have to ask about the block or the method or the whatever, the module or whatever, it's the class that I'm looking at or whatever, is what is this code supposed to do? And that question should be some phrased in some very clever or flowery way and put into a big giant poster shoved in front of you like the old IBM Think poster. Because almost any time anyone is having a programming problem, aside from me having to teach them how debugging works, which a surprising number of programmers don't know, and I don't know how they get their jobs done, is that question. So say you're in there and you got this clever bit that does some clever thing, and it's got there's some loops and some lines and some variables, and you're like, I don't know what the hell this thing is doing. If you know what the function it's in is doing, I know the purpose of this function, either because it's documented or it's named well or both, or you just know what it is because you wrote it recently. You say the job of this function is it takes this input, it gives you this output. It's very, I know what its job is. I know where it fits into the whole block diagram of my thing, and that you're like, well, of course I know that. I always know when I'm in, I'm looking at a couple lines of functions. Of course, everyone knows what this function does. But as you work on code for a long time, and especially if you're not constantly thinking about this, you will find yourself in the midst of a function, and someone will ask you, "What is this function supposed to do?" And you're like, "It does that. It doesn't matter. It gets called, and then I'm in here, and I have to do this thing." Like, well, wait. No, it matters. Don't say it doesn't matter. This just gets called when this happens, and eventually, I'm very deep in the call stack here, but this thing gets called, and I'm like, "What is its job? What is it supposed to be doing?" what is the job of this function? It's like, well, usually it just takes this and puts it there and processes this and turns into that and flips that on. But sometimes if this thing is also on, and you're like, whoa, if you can't explain to me what this function does, and it's like, what it does is affected by all this global state, and it's got lots of conditionals, and it behaves in 7 different ways, and it's deeply intertwined with other things, and it's all mixed in with the GUI, and it depends on the the state of the database or what orientation of the device is in, or you're like, this function is not you've lost sight of this. In the beginning, maybe it was a simple function, but to make your application work, you continue to screw up to the point where now I ask you, what does this function do? And you have to tell me a story that's 3 hours long. So that's your problem. It's not the clever line where you're doing some sort of bit field masking and some sort of clever thing where you're, sharing some variable and trying to reuse memory from a previous incarnation or do some caching. That's not your problem. Your problem is you don't know what the heck this friggin' function does. If you knew what it did, then by all means do the most crazy, clever, awesome way that you could do it, and then have an awesome unit test to make sure that crazy, clever way works exactly the same as the boring way, Then you're fine. Then go nuts. But that I find is the problem. And that's just like it's functional. Keep moving up. What is this class supposed to do? How do these things interact with each other? What's the relationship between these things in the program? Is there supposed, how many of them should there ever be? What are the assertions you can make about them, about what states they should be? If this one is in a state, then that one has to be in that state. Like, those are the questions that you have to keep in your mind. And the broader you can get that picture nailed down, the simpler it is. I don't know if any of you've had this experience, maybe with a really simple application or something where you have, or maybe an application that you've written 100 times. Like, I bet people who are teaching courses have this, where you're like, I'm going to do a canonical pet store example or something. If you have a design that really is the correct design from the beginning, coding itself becomes mechanical, almost boring. Because all you're doing is I know exactly what this function has to do. What it has to do is not complicated. I'm going to write it. It's completely straightforward. Maybe there's a couple of nuances and clever ways to do it, but who cares? And it just falls out. Your program just falls out of you. Because if you have the design correct, implementation is trivial, once you know any language, more or less, or any API. That's rarely the case. Usually you don't have the design done to that level, especially if you're doing some of the first time, so you keep having to go back and revise. And if you don't constantly think about, what is this thing supposed to do? What does this class do? What does this function do? What does this method do? What is its job? And the answer isn't simple enough for you to say, I know exactly what I have to do, then you have a problem. That's why I think Marco's text parser is a reasonable thing to fiddle with, because we know what its job does, right? It takes a web page and it gives you back text that doesn't have all the crap all around it. You can write a fancier explanation, but that's what it does. It's simple input-output operation. What happens in there can be extremely complex and cool and interesting or whatever, but in the grand scheme of things, that's a pretty simple function with very few side effects.
Exactly. Yeah, and you're right. When I'm talking about, competing with yourself in the future and trying to understand what you wrote and buckling under complexity, I am talking about, I'm not talking about the, how you shift the bits over here within this function. That, you're right, I don't care. I am talking about the crazy, everything you said, the global state, things that are weirdly intertwined, that have weird dependencies. That is it works in your head while you're writing it because you know all that stuff. It's in your memory. But then, in a month, you're going to forget how that works, and something's going to be breaking in a weird way, or you're going to have to add something to it, and that's going to break in a weird way, and you'll have no idea how this whole system works.
Yeah, you just want to get it to work. When you get in that state, you're like, I just want to hit the button and see that thing appear. I just want it to work, right? And so you're just putting code wherever you need to put code to make it work. You land someplace, some variable isn't set, you put the code right there to say, set that variable right here, without thinking, is this the place where I should be doing this? Because, every program falls into that crap, because everyone reaches that threshold, oh, I'm so close to this thing working. If I just put a conditional there, the thing would work. Is that the right place to put that conditional? Why do you need to do that check? Is, no one wants to ask those questions. They just want to they want to click the button, they want to see the thing appear. And everybody does that to some degree. And if you multiply that by the number of programs and the complexity of the program, and if you're not constantly revising your view of the world and constraining your code to say, is this the right place for this code? Maybe there is no right place for this code, which reflects a problem in our design that we didn't foresee. So now it's time to go back to the giant block level and say, okay, maybe we need to redo these blocks. And nobody wants to think about that. You're like, but I'm so close. Well, if I just put this conditional here, I'm so close, it'll be fine. And I'll put a comment on the top of it. It'll be fine. That's why when you look at, hell is other people's code. When you look at someone else's code, you're like, oh, this needs to be rewritten. It's because that person maybe didn't do such a good job of keeping their handle on things. And you look at these functions, you see this function does 10 different things. And the name has very, very tenuous connection with the content of the code that I see in there. And it makes you want to rewrite it,
It's funny, the way you're describing things, I unsurprisingly agree with everything you said. It's almost like the 5 whys of developing code. Well, why did I write this method? Okay, why is this method part of this class? Why is this class part of this namespace or part of this module, and so on and so forth? And you certainly make a very interesting point. And I think that intrinsically that's what developers tend to do, but doing it more explicitly and deliberately certainly can't do anything but help.
Yeah, that was one a mini topic I had that I think I never got to in Hypercritical, was like, what makes a good programmer? And this article that Marco threw the link in for is very similar to it. And my contention is, well, this gets more touchy-feely, but one of the things that there's lots of kinds of good programmers, right? And there are, the classic good programmer like John Carmack or whatever, who's just like, a genius, really good at math, can do very clever algorithmic things. Like, that's what we think of as like, oh, he's an amazing programmer, right? And there's definitely a place for that. But another kind of very good programmer is, again, I don't want to get the touchy-feely things, but like, people are motivated by to avoid things that make them uncomfortable, right? And if disorder makes you uncomfortable, that will be a strong motivator for you to make things ordered in your life. People who are discomforted by, things that are messy or disorder, they usually, like, people say obsessive compulsive, but that's totally the wrong word for it. I don't know what the right word for it is, but like, they have websites where they show like a line of pencils where one pencil is poking out. The type of people who are annoyed by that pencil poking out and want to push it back down, everyone's annoyed by it by a little bit, but some people are made much more uncomfortable by that pencil poking out than other people are. The more you have that feeling, this kind of, it makes you physically uncomfortable for your books on your bookshelves not to be aligned, or for like things to be out of place. And, like I said, everyone has it in some degree, but some people have it to a higher degree. That is another kind of good programmer. If you find someone who is really, really uncomfortable when things aren't indented properly, you would think like, oh, what makes me a good programmer is my technical skill, and I'm good with algorithms, and I know about user interface. But really, an entire class of programmers, what makes them good programmers is their complete inability to tolerate things being out of order. And that extending all to like, this class should not be doing this. That's not the responsibility of this method to do this at all. That state should not be touched by here. There should be an abstraction between this and that. You shouldn't reach into that to go that. Every single one of those things, once you get some knowledge of programming, becomes like that pencil poking up, and you just cannot tolerate it. All the way down to the simple things like inconsistent indenting. Like, I know programmers who have no problem with inconsistent indenting. Spaces, tabs, random curly brace styles. Like, it's just like a giant mess. And that's not common. I think programmers are more towards the can't stand it when their books aren't lined up on the shelf. But that skill, like, that, it's not a skill, but like that sort of personality disorder, I don't know, mental impairment, that, being physically uncomfortable to a degree that's outside the realm of the norm by disorder makes you a better programmer of a particular kind. And it's usually not people want to think that their superpower is derived from like their amazing strength or the super speed or the great intellect, and don't want to think that the thing that makes them a good programmer is the thing that handicaps them in the rest of their regular life. Like, not to a debilitating degree, but and again, obsessive compulsive is an entirely different thing. I don't know what the thing is I'm talking about. I don't know what the real term is, but some of the, like, that's like turning, finding a silver lining in the things that are mentally wrong with you. And it's definitely the case with me. I don't like disorder, and I think it makes me a better programmer. And I think every programmer has that to some degree.
Oh, definitely. All right, well, before we continue, let's take a break to thank our first sponsor this week. It's a new sponsor this week. It is Warby Parker. Warby Parker was founded with a rebellious spirit and a lofty objective: to create boutique-quality, classically crafted eyewear at a revolutionary price point. So this is what it is. They sell glasses online, and they do it really, really well. They believe glasses should not cost as much as an iPhone. They have prescription glasses, including prescription lenses that start at just $95. They also have a titanium collection starting at just $145. All glasses include anti-reflective and anti-glare coatings at no additional cost. They include a hard case, a cleaning cloth. It's a really, really great product. And they make home buying easy and risk-free. They have this thing called the Home Try-On program. And what they do is you go to their site and you pick out up to 5 frames to try out. And they have all these sorts of tools on their site. You can do things like have an image of your face that it then like wraps on. It like maps the glasses onto your face. You can preview it there. For the Home Try-On for free, Online, easy, risk-free, the home try-on, you pick 5 frames you want to try on in person, and they mail them to you. You pick whatever you want. If you want one of those, you can go buy it. You send them right back, and then they send it to you with a prescription. It's really, really great. Now, when they booked this spot, they offered the 3 of us free glasses if we wanted to try it out. So they had us try out the home try-on and so we could see how good of a product this was. So we could tell you about it. And I don't wear glasses, but my wife does, and she's famous on the internet. So I'm actually Tiff is here. So is Hops, but Hops will be quiet, I think. Tiff is here, and she's going to actually be joining this and doing the rest of the sponsor read for me because she had a whole experience with him that was really quite good. So here's Tiff.
Hi. Yeah.
Hey, there we are. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
So we're all Warbies, huh?
Yeah, well, I am, and it sounds like you are, John.
I got the home try-ons and I ordered my pair, but they haven't come yet.
Ah, okay. So you're a little behind me. Now, Tiff, have yours come in yet?
They have. I got them yesterday.
Are they, or are they not spectacular?
I am so impressed. Like, when I got that box, it is such high quality. I'm just ridiculously impressed because I just recently bought new glasses maybe like a month ago for the first time in 15 years, which is crazy. And they were way expensive. And when I finally got them, they ended up not fitting. So having this experience was perfect for kind of fixing the bad purchase I had before, which ended up costing so much more money than the Warby Parkers did. So what about you?
Yeah, I got a pair of sunglasses, actually. So I have terrible eyes, but my eyes are so bad that I actually have to wear contacts. And I'm not going to get into the specifics about it, but I got a pair of non-prescription sunglasses, and I did the home try-on thing. And one of the great things about the home try-on thing is you can say, as I did, well, you know what, self, let's reach a little and go out of our comfort zone and have Warby Parker send a pair of glasses that maybe you wouldn't have picked out if you just saw them on the rack. Maybe something a little trendier than you're used to. And so I got these 5 pairs of sunglasses, and I tried them all on, and I ended up actually choosing one that was a little bit out of my comfort zone. And I got the final set about a week ago, and I love them. They're really well built, really, really nice. And I have absolutely no complaints. And granted, I'm kind of compelled to say that, but it really is genuinely true. Now, John, you said you have or have not gotten yours.
I got my try-on ones. That's like
Okay.
The great thing about the try-on box is like you pick 5 glasses, isn't that number, right? And I don't think like there's an option to pick fewer or anything. And 5 is a good number because, like Casey said, it does make you pick because you can usually pick your top 3, and then after that you're like, well, I'm pretty sure I'm going to like one of these 3 that I picked, right?
Exactly.
But I got 2 more slots to fill, and you pick like weirder stuff. I did the same thing. And the other thing that impressed me is like on the website, like if you don't want to do the home try on, they have the thing where you can like upload a picture of yourself and try it on. And I'm like, okay, there's going to be something. I'll upload a picture and I'll like paste a copy of the glasses over my face and it'll look stupid and like I won't be able to tell if I like them. But they do this thing. I don't know how it works. They must be like doing face detection, figuring out where your pupils are and then scaling it. And they have like a floating 3D version of the glasses frames. So you can like rotate it and angle it so that it matches how your face is in the photo. And it hides like the little things that go over your ears so they don't overlap your face and everything. It's really impressive. I think I almost could have picked them out just from the website using the little 3D thing. I would really love to know how that works. I think it might be Flash. I don't know what technology they're using behind it, but I was really impressed by that. But yeah, the fact that they're going to send you the glasses, you don't even have to bother with that if you don't want to. You get the glasses, and yeah, just take out the box and sit in front of the mirror, put on one, put on another one. And the great thing is, like, I'm ordering sunglasses as well. They gave me sunglass lenses in my sunglasses, so it wasn't just like empty, like sometimes at the eyeglass places, like it's just an empty frame with nothing in them, or they're clear or whatever. These had actual sunglass, like not prescription, right? Because these are just a try-on pair, but you could see how they would look on you as sunglasses, which was nice. So I did pick the, 3 pair that I thought I would like and the 2 exotic pair, and I ended up picking one of the ones I thought I would like because I guess I'm a boring person. But it was fun. It was fun to try them out, and I didn't end up with the ones that I thought would be like my clear number one. Like I don't need to do these 5 things. I know I'm going to like this one.
Same here.
I ended up picking like my 3rd one.
See, I did a second round of home try-ons because I was so excited about the sunglasses. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get a pair of regular glasses as well. And I only picked 3 for my home try-on. And so Warby Parker took it upon themselves to see the styles that I liked and that I picked, and they filled in the rest of the other 2 in the box. And when I got them, I ended up picking one of the pairs that the Warby Parker people had picked for me, which was pretty impressive. So I thought that was a really cool feature. So you can pick fewer than 5, but they'll fill in for you. And they ended up making a better choice than even I did. So
They know you
Who would
better
pick
than you
fewer
know
than
you.
5? Who would not? You have 5 slots. You fill them all. Say, hey, just
well, this
give
is
me
my second round, so I had already done 5, and then so I was going to do. I'm like, there's 3
So on
more.
on the second round, you picked one of the ones they picked you. So you picked like altogether 7 pairs of glasses, and you didn't pick any, or no, 8 pair of glasses, and you didn't pick any of the 8. Your own 8. You picked one of the 2 that they gave you.
Correct. Yep.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So yeah, they did a fantastic job. And Marco's hovering behind me, so I think he wants to get back on the air, but maybe I won't let
shove him out of the way. Nobody likes him anyway.
Oh, poor Marco.
No, I'm just kidding. Oh, thanks, Tiff. I appreciate the cameo.
All right, thank you guys.
She needs to get her own mic.
I know. We should get her on mic.
I only have one mic. I'll have to rig that up.
If only you had sold something recently, so you can afford another.
Anyway, all right, let's finish the spot. So, a few more things I have to say. So, so Warby Parker, they price their glasses affordably because they believe glasses are like a fashion accessory. And if each pair doesn't cost you like hundreds and hundreds of dollars, then you can afford to have more than one if you want to. And they know that not everybody can afford glasses. There's a whole lot of people in need who need glasses and who can't afford them. They have a great program called Buy a Pair, Give a Pair, where for every pair of their glasses sold, they also donate a pair to people in need. And that's really cool. And it's just so... Ultimately, they're a fantastic glasses company. They make high-quality products. Tiff was also... I don't think she mentioned, she's also very impressed by their quality relative to her like expensive professional ones from before. She said they're actually better in most ways than the ones she got from her eye doctor. So very, very happy with this company. And... So go to warbyparker.com. That's WARBY Parker.com. And when you order the home try-ons, do it, have fun. When you order the final pair that you want to buy, use our coupon code ATP, and that'll get you free 3-day shipping. So again, use coupon code ATP when you make your final purchase, and that'll get you free 3-day shipping. So thanks a lot to Warby Parker. Great glasses company. Thanks for sponsoring the show. All right.
Yeah, apologies that took forever, but they really are that good.
Oh, yeah, that's all right. I figure it was fun. And I even ran the idea by them having Tiff Cummings. I'm like, look, and they have sunglasses and stuff, but I already have like 3 pairs of sunglasses. That I'm like, Tiff was like, do you really need another one? And she actually really needed the glasses because her existing ones that she'd just gotten were not fitting her at all. And so I ran it by them, the idea of having her to the average. And they're like, yeah, sure, that's great. They're a fun company. So anyway, thanks a lot to them. I wanted to talk a little bit about an offshoot of the topic that we had right before the break about code, long-term health, and when things get too complex and they kind of buckle under their own weight. So the Instapaper web app, as we discussed, was very simple and didn't have too many of those problems. The iOS app, though, I'm afraid might, because on so many... the Instapaper iOS app was in the App Store on day one. So the first bits of code were written for iOS 2, and most of the current code was written for iOS 3. And I've matured it over time, to add features here and there, but the core code base, as is today, there's still like some view structure in there from iOS 3. And there were some modern features that I never took advantage of, things like child view controllers, view controller containment, all that stuff that was introduced in, I think, 5. I never even took advantage of that. And back then, and the list of things that this applies to gets smaller every OS release, but over time, there's always been UI characteristics or effects that I've wanted to achieve. And the API, for whatever reason, didn't expose them. So you basically have to fake it or hack it somehow. And over time, Instapaper built up quite a lot of those for various things. And a lot of it was to its great advantage. Things like the iBook style pagination. There was an API for that, but the structure of it made it almost impossible to use in any reasonable way with a web view. And, of course, actually in iOS 7... I think they even had it on one of the slides. They've added pagination to web views. It's just a flag you can set. So like one line of that will replace, thousands of lines of Instapaper code. But I'm trying, over time that really made Instapaper's iOS code base pretty big, and there are a few hacks in there that are pretty uncomfortable. And so now I'm working on this new big app, and it's actually going to be a Business Insider reader. That's the new app. So I'm working on this new app, and what I'm trying to do in the UI is avoid those kind of hacks as much as I can. Like, rather than, like, if I want a certain really cool feature, rather than saying, "Oh yeah, let me invest 2 weeks into making this tremendous pile of hacks that I'm going to hate in 6 months when I have to go back and change something, and it's going to have all these weird side effects because I just have to do that one feature." Rather than doing that, I'm trying, and this is actually pretty hard because I love doing those crazy hacks at the time, but I'm really trying to lean more towards just doing the 80% solution, doing like whatever the UI affords me the ability to do easily, whatever the API allows in an easy way, just do that. And don't get into this giant, pile of hacks style of like, got to achieve this one crazy feature by doing this big pile of hacks. But I don't know. What do you think? I mean, and I don't know if that's realistic. I mean, because part of the reason I did it with Instapaper was that A, it was cool, B, it got press, and C, it was a huge competitive advantage. So I don't know. Maybe doing that sometimes is a good idea.
Yeah, I think you can't avoid it because it makes you stand out. Like, maybe there's a brief honeymoon period with iOS 7 where merely just doing the standard UI in iOS 7 is enough for like the day one launch. But all those things that Instapaper did that made it different, it's branding. It's branding for your application, and even if it's just like, boy, I wish that could slide out instead of just appearing, and there's no way to do that. Well, if I make it a totally different element, or if I do something with custom core animation layers instead of just using the UI kit, navigation controller that it does whatever it wants to do, it'll just add that extra little bit of difference there. And those little things add up and make your application stand out as, oh, this is not just a bunch of standard controls and widgets interacting in exactly the same way as they would in some demo application. It's got a little extra. And you have to find the balance between a little extra or letterpress, right? So that's the continuum, right?
Full Brichter.
Yeah, right. And clearly, you're not even approaching full Brichter, right? But you're saying, well, maybe Instapaper, like, I saw what that was like when it lived over the course of 3 entire major releases of iOS, and it get a little creaky. So maybe just try to start out with as few of those as you can, and maybe just use one. Like, there's just one effect or element or transition that I can't get that I'm going to do in a fancy way, and it's something that people will see a lot and it will distinguish my application. But I'm going to hold off on being like, boy, I really wish that I could get that thing to do that, but oh well, the thing that it does now is fine. Or, I really wish that was a little bit different, but I'll just use the regular collection class. And even though the regular collection class doesn't display, doesn't reshuffle or show the titles the way I want, or wouldn't it be great if the title could fly onto, all that stuff is going to annoy you about using Apple standard controls, especially the ones that are immature. But if you just sort of grin and bear it and pick your battles and maybe pick 1 or 2 places in the first version where you do fancy stuff, and then just wait, because like you said, if you wait long enough, maybe it'll get built in. And the people who waited until page turning was built in, they had a competitive disadvantage. But there are other instances where people didn't have a competitive disadvantage if they just waited for some sort of navigation controller feature to appear, and you had hacked it in version 2 and it appeared in version 3. That was maybe not a worthwhile hack for something that most people didn't even know was a fancy behavior.
Well, and it's also about where you're making these fancy hacks. So, for example, the iPad version of Instapaper had what basically was a collection view before there was a UI collection view. Isn't that right?
It was called IP Fake Grid View.
Yeah, exactly. And so what I'm driving at is you could do something fairly wild with UI collection view that isn't standard, but is supported. And that's a very fine line, but a very important one. So here it is, you're taking UI collection view, which is a completely standard component, but you're doing a wild, I don't remember what they call it, like a layout or whatever. You're doing a really wild custom layout in order to do something interesting. And if you look at WWDC 2012, when they were talking about the collection view, they did some unbelievably clever and trick things with the collection view with not a lot of code, just by doing a custom layout. And so maybe the right answer is you choose easy and intelligent places to make these custom wild things happen that are kind of supported. Or maybe you just do some really wild stuff with core animation that isn't off the reservation, if you will, but it's different. And by doing it in places that are sort of designed to have this flexibility, then maybe that'll prevent some of that creakiness in the future.
Yeah, like anything that supports views, like do something fancy in your view, but and that is probably more maintainable than saying the thing that controls these views, that's where I'm going to do the fancy stuff, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean that, like, because a lot of those hacks that I did over the years were things like transitions, and to some extent the fake grid view was actually, honestly, the fake grid view was not that bad because it was self-contained, as you're saying, John. It's like it mimics a table view. In fact, it actually was a table view subclass, which is its own breed of craziness, and it worked like a table view. The data source, the delegate, all worked the exact same way. So it was actually pretty black boxy. So it wasn't really ever a problem.
And you didn't have to write UI collection view. You didn't have to say, oh, this is a completely flexible collection view, and you can use it in any orientation with any number of rows and heights and you can delegate the views to anything that wants to populate them in. You didn't have to make that. You just had to make something that worked for Instapaper, which narrowly constrains what you have to do. So you can make your grid view work. You're not on the hook to make a general purpose collection view that works in a million different contexts.
Right. Exactly. So that really wasn't one of the hacks. The bigger hacks came from things like transitions and like, especially like more on the iPhone. Like on the iPad, I was doing a lot more of my own custom UI. A very common practice, though, for programmers making iOS stuff is you want to generally stay within UIKit for a lot of uses, but then you hit some kind of weird limitation, some kind of edge case. Probably it's an UI bar button item, and you hit some kind of edge case, and you're like, well, if I want this to do this thing, then I have to like not even use UI toolbar, or I have to reimplement my own button, or something, something on a pretty large scale like that. And if you say yes to even a couple of those things, it starts getting kind of insane. And then if you start saying yes to things that involve multiple views and multiple controllers, like navigational structures or transitions, then it can start getting pretty hairy pretty quickly. And every OS release that comes out, this becomes easier to do in a supported or at least a cleaner way. iOS 7 supports all sorts of cool new stuff to make a lot of these hacks either unnecessary or substantially better and more maintainable. But there's always going to be that bleeding edge of things that aren't supported, and there's going to be like, I think it's a lot like when making the Instapaper web app, like Instapaper itself was a collection of very, very simple things with like two hard things: the text parser and the Kindle format thing. Those were like two hard things, and I wrapped it with a bunch of easy things. If the number of crazy things that you're doing is pretty small and everything else you're doing is pretty easy, then that is a competitive advantage, and you can get away with it. It's a matter of balancing those. Like, so in my new app, I have this one like really crazy low-level feature that I really want to do, but it's one of those things where it hits an edge of UIKit, and I'm going to have to do a lot of work to make that work right. And I'm weighing now, like, should I maybe ship version 1 without it? Because it's going to be so much work for one feature. But it's a pretty nice feature, So it's always this battle in my head of like, do I do this? Do I not do this? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a tough thing, and especially early on, you don't know when to say no yet a lot of the times. And what I hear you saying earlier, to turn this into the Joel Spolsky rerun show, is the kind of the broken windows thing, where if you allow yourself early on to go a little bit wild, then the next time you have the question, well, can I get a little bit wild with this? Well, I already did it before. Why not do it again? And it's a slippery slope. And so especially if you're early on in development, as I know you are, it's better, in my opinion, in most cases, to try to stay as stock as possible and as simple as possible so that you don't allow yourself to go absolutely crazy from the foundation up.
Exactly.
All right. Do we want to talk about something else that's awesome, or do we want to wait another minute?
We do. Let's do it now while there's a gap.
Excellent.
Our second awesome thing is yet another new sponsor. I believe they're new to our show. They're not new to my site or me as a person, but they're Igloo, also known as Igloo Software. So Igloo is an intranet you'll actually like. Now, I don't know of anybody who, at least anybody who's never seen Igloo before, I don't know of anybody who has any kind of positive association with the word intranet. Generally, these are horrible internal corporate sites that you're forced to use at your job that are badly made, badly maintained, barely work, and require you to use IE6 or some craziness like that. Nobody likes their intranet, unless they're Igloo customers, because Igloo actually makes an intranet that you will like and that your workers will like. So you can share content quickly with all sorts of built-in apps. They have blogs, they have calendars, file sharing, forums, they have Twitter-like microblogs, wikis, and everything can be social. You can comment on any type of content. You can @reply. You can @mention your coworkers, Twitter style. You can follow content for updates. You can tag things. You can group things. You can add on rooms. You can have mini igloos for certain teams, certain divisions to work in. The whole thing, all these features are very, very easy. It's drag and drop. It has responsive design. It uses beautiful typekit fonts. These people really know their stuff. And it's like, they're applying all the awesome, modern, progressive design and features that we get on the consumer web to the intranet world. And that's extremely rare. So they're doing it all for you. Plus, Igloo has enterprise-grade security. You can start using it right away. It's free to use up to 10 people. That's pretty cool. If you have a staff of 10 people or less, it's totally free. So go start using it today. And when it grows, it's only $12 per person per month. For a business, this is extremely affordable, way cheaper than developing your own, and it's just so much better. It's worlds better than most people's intranets. So go to igloosoftware.com/ATP. That's igloosoftware.com/ATP. Start building your Igloo today, free to use up to 10 people. Go for it. Thanks a lot to Igloo Software. They're a fantastic sponsor. They sponsored lots of great podcasts. They actually listen to the shows, which is pretty great. And so they've done inside jokes on some of the shows. In fact, let me go to this page, and sure enough, it says "Welcome ATP listeners" up top. And they're fans. They're fans of our stuff. They appreciate what we do. So give them a shot. igloosoftware.com/ATP. Thanks a lot to Igloo for making awesome intranets and sponsoring our show.
Thanks.
They should have a program where they send people to your office to convince the powers that be that they should get rid of their current internet, because that is often this. I wish I could get rid of my intranet and replace it with Igloo, but I can't because I'm in a 2,000 person company and I'm one employee, right? So they should have a team that says, "Look, you need to change," because I wish we didn't have to use the things we're using.
Oh, they also have a sandwich video. I mean, come on, how cool is that?
How can you go wrong with a sandwich video?
Yeah, so check them out. They're awesome. Man,
if nothing else, go watch the sandwich video.
Intranets are so bad usually. Oh man, I mean, this is one of those problems. It's like when we have hover advertising. It's like everyone has seen terrible domain registrars. Well, everyone has seen terrible intranets.
Yeah, without revealing too much, only recently was I able to do something without using Java in my web browser on my internet. Remember Java in the browser? Well, only recently was there a non-Java way to do it. I'm like, yes.
I actually
small victories.
I recently wished for Java in the browser to work again. For some reason on my machine it just doesn't work anymore. And I don't know if I uninstalled it from one of the security things recently or what, but my livefish.com fish show downloader, like every time there's a fish tour, I buy it, and then every night of the concert I can go download the show from that night, and they have a Java multi-file downloader thing, and that hasn't worked. So I've had to hold that option and just click all the links one by one. It's really a hard life.
Like an animal.
Yep, exactly.
It's too bad you can't write a program to automate that for you.
I thought about actually writing or at least trying to find a Safari extension. I'm sure somebody.
No, don't do Safari extension. Just do the ghetto way where you copy and paste the source and run it through a thing and make a bunch of.
I could do that, but there might be some kind of weird session stuff. I don't know, because it's all authenticated because it's.
Grab your cookie jar, and I know I've done it many times trying to grab WWDC things, grab Apple videos, and every time I do it, I'm like, I should have a tool that does this. Nope, I'll just do it the crappy way again. Just paste into BBEdit and repeatedly hold down insane chords that involve 3 or 4 modifiers at the same time that I've nonetheless memorized to grind the files up into bits and then throw in a double score data token and start writing Perl code on top of it and make a series of scripts to process it. And yeah.
Actually, what this really should be is a bookmarklet, because then you're running right in the context of the page. It'd be really, really easy to make that.
Yeah, you could write it in JavaScript too.
All right, so what else do we want to talk about? John, I know you had an interesting topic you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, this was LinkedIn Daring Fireball, I think, today. I think that's where I got it from. And the title of the story is Regular People Have No Idea How to Manage Photos on Their Phone, which is not really so much what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the points that were gotten to at the end of this thing, and I don't even know who wrote it.
Bradley Chambers.
Yeah, okay, Bradley Chambers. And he's talking about how the problem with photo management on your phones, where people just buy phones and they take pictures with them. And, like, I mean, I think about this, all my relatives and non-technical friends who have phones, like, what do they think about, they own a phone, right? And they're taking pictures with it. And sometimes they're pictures that they care about, like pictures of their kids or at their soccer game or their son scoring his first goal. It's like something like they're important memories, right? Did they ever think about, like, what happens if you drop your phone, out your car window when you're driving or something? Like, what happens if you spill coffee on it? I think they don't think those photos are gone forever. I think they just think, like, the photos are magically safe, or maybe they don't. I don't even know what regular people think about this, but the bottom line is that Apple doesn't take care of you or your data to the degree that I think it should. And this was, I think, way back when I first started writing on, like, the FatBits blog on Ars Technica years and years ago. One of the first things I wrote about was this problem that Apple has made these devices and encouraged everyone, even back in the Digital Hub days, to put your most precious possessions, precious non-living possessions, on their hardware, and then they don't care what the hell happens to it after that. Like, not that it's that bad, but, like, I think there should be more concern about taking care of your stuff. Because, seriously, like, if your house burns down, your family and your pets all get out alive, the first thing that you care about, other than, like, hoping you had some kind of insurance, is probably, like, your family photos or your movies, because those things can't be replaced. You can buy a new car, you can buy new furniture, you can build a new house, as long as everyone is safe, right? But you can't recreate those photos that we have all these devices to make these memories. What's keeping them safe? And unless you're a nerd and have, like, this crazy backup regime and know exactly where, the problems are, your stuff is completely vulnerable. And we're so close now to having a technology where Apple or any other company could take care of us, and yet they don't. And so the problem with the photos on your phone is, like, you start taking pictures and you keep going, and once you get past, like, 1,000 pictures, or, whatever the limit of, 5 gigabytes free they give you in iCloud?
Yep.
If you drop, those photos may only be on your phone. And if you drop your phone in the ocean, you lost all the photos that weren't, in the last 1,000 that are in PhotoStream or something. And that's if assuming you got through the process and got it stuff in PhotoStream or whatever. I don't know if people just assume that Apple's taking care of their pictures, but at this point, Apple should be taking care of everything. Apple's devices should be, designed in such a way that if they're network-connected devices, that if you smash your computer with a hammer, and if your house burns down, if you throw your iPhone in the ocean, your data should still be available. And I'm not saying Apple needs to make that happen for free, but they need to figure out some way to make it happen. And back when I wrote about this on FatBits ages ago, it was like, I was saying that every single computer should come with at least 2 hard drives, but you shouldn't tell people that there's 2 in there, and all your data should be redundant at all times, right? Because hard drive failure was a big problem. And online backups weren't tenable back then because people didn't have fast enough internet connections. So I'm just saying, look, at least make it so that if someone's hard drive dies, they don't lose all the picture of their kids. Always have, like, double. And who can afford to do that? Apple's, like, the only company, because everyone else had razor-thin margins, but Apple maybe could, like, build it into the price of their devices or whatever. And at the end of this article, it has a suggestion that's, like, again, may not be economically feasible, but it would be nice, and it's the same type of thing. Make iCloud free. This is reading from the article. Make iCloud free for the total size of all active devices. So if you have, like, a 16 gigabyte iPhone and a 32 gigabyte iPad, you should get 48 gigabytes of iCloud for backup. So at the very least, every single byte of data that's on your phone and your iPad can be backed up. And if you buy a new iPad and it's 32 gigabytes, boom, you get another 32 gigabytes of storage. Like, make that the default. If possible, make it free. If you can't make it free, build it into the price of the device. They're already, like, premium price devices. Like, it's important. If Apple would commit to this, they could be the vendor that gets the reputation, like, oh yeah, Apple costs more, but you won't have to worry about losing your data. They protect it all for you. Like, they'll keep it backed up. You don't have to worry about, monthly fees and all these other things and worrying about your backup things. You can buy an iPhone, take pictures with it, chuck it into a fire, go to the Apple Store, get a new iPhone. Whether you have to buy it or not, don't worry, your pictures will be there. Apple does not have that reputation. Nobody has that reputation now, but the first person to get that reputation, it will be worth a lot to people, because I think most people are using these devices and using their computers and stuff, and all their digital memories are completely vulnerable and could be destroyed at any moment. And they're just like crossing their fingers, hoping it doesn't happen.
You know, you're absolutely right. And I had a friend call me maybe a month or two ago, and he said, "Oh, you know, my wife, I think we're going to get a new iPhone." And of course, this was just a month or so ago. And I said, "Oh my God, no! Why? You know, the 5S is coming out soon. What are you thinking?" And so he said, "Well, she's out of space." It's okay. Well, try to take stuff off her phone then. Well, she's got so many pictures on there. Well, I mean, depending on how many pictures you're talking about, that may or may not be the problem. Well, and she takes a lot of video.
Oh boy.
Oh, goodness. And so it took talking to they're both my friends, but talking to my friend, the husband who called me and his wife, it took a while talking to them and saying, no, you've got to get this stuff off your phone, because not only is it not secure on your phone, like John is saying, but it's taking up a crud load of space, especially 1080 video. I mean, 30 seconds of video is like 8 gazillion gigs. And so you have to get that off your phone. There's no need to buy a new phone just for that.
And then where are they going to put it? That's the next question going to be. Is going to say, okay, well, when I take it off my phone, where do I put it? And it used to be, at least you could assume they had a personal computer, put it onto your personal computer, but that's just another place where it can die, because you put it on your personal computer, and then that personal computer's hard drive is going to die in T-minus 2.5 years. And what's going to happen, because they're not doing backups, right? And they're probably not even doing Time Machine, because they didn't want to buy a second hard drive and hook it up.
Yep.
There's no, you want them to be taken care of. You want to be able to just tell them, like you could, like, what kind of computer should I buy? Get a Mac, right? You want to be able to say, what should I do about backups? You want to be able to say something like, are you signed up for iCloud on all your devices? Yes, then you're fine. But you can't say that. There's nothing you can say to them. You have to have like a 7-hour conversation about backup strategies. It's going to make their eyes glaze over. And even at the end of it, you're going to be going back home wondering, are they ever going to do any of the things I suggested? Are they going to forget about it? Is their Time Machine drive not going to be mounted and they're not going to notice for 6 months and they're going to lose all, we as technical people trying to support less technical people, don't have any peace of mind about this. And in reality, we're so close to having, we have basically the technology, and it's just an economic problem and a problem of like will. I mean, and Google has come the closest with the Chromebook initiative. That presentation they originally did on the Chromebook, despite the fact that just using a really expensive but nice looking laptop that only has a web browser is not appealing yet to people and is kind of limiting, they had the right idea with like, take your Chromebook, run it over the steamroller. Don't worry about it. Get a new Chromebook, type in your stuff. Everything is back. You didn't lose a thing. As long as we had time to upload it, you're fine, right?
Well, but hold on, though. That's a big problem. Time to upload.
Well,
I know.
Think about
that. I mean, that's one of the big problems holding this up right now. It isn't just about there's no web services that are highly integrated that are doing all this for you for low cost or for free. That isn't the main problem. The main problem is, think about how many people own iPhones or devices like iPhones who are in a situation or have a home connection or have data caps in which uploading things to cloud backup, uploading photos and videos to cloud backup on a regular basis is impractical.
But you don't have to always upload it. I mean, like, think about when we did the transporter spot. Like, we have the technology to do most of those things. Like, if you could just say, buy a bunch of these things and stick them around your house like potted plants, and put one in your office and give one to your friend. Like, true, if it was just easy enough for you to do, like, we're close. We're really, really close for it to being economically feasible for someone who can afford an iPhone to never have any excuse to lose their data. And even if it's not cloud, like, cloud would be like the third tier. Like, and the second tier is like, have a computer system that's redundant. And like the other tier is like, have a bunch of little network attached wireless storage nodes around your house. Because like, it's like a caching hierarchy where like on the device is good. And then when you get back home to your 802.11 AC wireless that's super duper fast that everyone's going to have in 5 years or whatever it's going to take for that to start to penetrate, right? That'll go to your little like transporter type devices or your time capsule or whatever. And then the next thing is like, it'll be uploading to iCloud when you're asleep. And if you have your slow connection, it will like, we're almost there. It's just a matter of like working out a system and then some company committing to it and saying, you know what, we're going to be responsible for protecting your data. Not saying things like, when you're coming to the Genius Bar, make sure you have a backup, and knowing everyone's going to look at that and go, yeah, whatever. And then be pissed when all the data's gone when their computer gets repaired. Like, I'm sure it happens all the time to them. And it's in Apple's interest as like the premium vendor and the guy who makes the hardware and the software. And now they have web services to get there before someone else does and figure this thing out.
Well, and it's more than that too, though, isn't it? Because say you're on a vacation, and like say when Marco and Tiff and Aaron and I were in Germany, what if I took a whole bunch of pictures on my iPhone because I'm not a photographer and I don't have a fancy pants camera? I take a whole bunch of pictures on my iPhone, which at this point are irreplaceable. I may or may not have had access to any network connection, but particularly Wi-Fi. And all of a sudden, now all those pictures are gone because Marco ran over my phone with his M5.
But you have access to each other. So, like, you should be able to, if a family, like, this gets into the whole other thing about families. If you guys all go on a trip together, you should be able to enter into an arrangement whereby all of your own things are transferred among yourself in the little circle of, like, the ad hoc network that is your people there. So if you drop your phone, oh, don't worry, I've got all your pictures. They got pulled down onto my MacBook Air, onto, like, you know, or some percentage of them. Like, the technology is there for all these things to work. It's just a question of working out the interface and the decision to do it. It shouldn't be like that your device is little island and that you guys could go on a week-long vacation with no internet access, and as soon as you drop your phone, all those pictures are gone. Like, we should be able to stop that from happening in some way.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you know, there's always this balance between ease of use for regular people and getting around all these edge cases. And so, like, you know, the ways to get around all these edge cases usually involve local hardware, you know, where you have either like a time machine disk or a time capsule. And by the way, why don't iPhones back up to time capsules? But okay, that's a separate question. So you have things like that to avoid the whole bandwidth and data cap issue. But those things are all things that regular people are often going to either not think they need and therefore not buy because it's expensive, or they're not going to do it right in the way that, like, I'm sure everyone listening to the show has at some point had a friend or relative say, oh, well, I lost files, my hard drive died, can you help me get them back? And you say, oh, okay, yeah, did you have a backup? And they say yes. And you go over to their house, and they're here, all my files were on my backup drive. You get it? Yeah? Sinking in?
I got
you know
nothing.
these people? Where
No, I know
they
none of
buy
these
an external
people.
hard drive because
Oh, God, no.
their laptop drive is too small. So they buy an external hard drive, and that just becomes the place where they put all their files. And they think it's a backup drive because it's an external hard drive. Mm-hmm. And
No, I see what you're
they
saying
call it a backup, and they think of it as a backup, but it's just one hard drive with their files on it.
I tuned out as soon as you said you had friends that had backups that are normal people.
Yeah, because no one ever has backups. Like,
Well,
this
but
technology...
people call external drives backup drives.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm with you, but I was still trying to process the thought of a regular person, not a nerd, saying, yes, I do have a backup.
Anyway,
And the
so
thing-
you have those
well,
people, or you have the people who, you know, if you try to make it work for all these edge cases, because, you know, the other problem is that these modern devices, the cameras keep getting better. So you have these devices that you know, you mentioned with video. You can't just tell a regular person, oh, well, all your photos will be backed up in low resolution for a little while, but your videos mostly won't be because they're 400 megs each, and that's impractical. You know, so you get around that stuff by having local stuff that avoids the network. Once you involve the network, though, it can be easy and automatic for everyone. So you either have local stuff that is expensive and can be easily misconfigured or screwed up that can back up everything, or internet-based stuff that can be automatic and foolproof, but you have that problem of bandwidth and data caps, and therefore usually can't back up everything.
Well, like I said, we're so close. It's kind of like when we just barely got the technology to do digital distribution of audio because MP3 came out, but we still couldn't really do movies or TV, right? And even today, like, audio is like no problem. We throw around songs that they're tiny files. They're easy to go. You know, the bandwidth and the memory capacity and computing, everything totally went past audio. But for video, we're like, you can buy TV shows, but we can't really store them all, and we can't really have a big hard drive, so some of them will stream, and we can kind of stream 1080p, but it doesn't look like we're just on the edge of being able to handle video. And for things like video you record yourself in 1080p, that's probably outside the realm of what we can handle. But we're right on the cusp, and I think it's okay to start with, like, we can only do songs, but only crazy people are downloading videos on the internet, like back in the Napster days, right? Just doing it for songs is a big win, and it lets you sort of like work out the kinks of how things go, so that eventually 10, 15 years later, when feature-length movies start to become possible, TV, it's like, oh, well, we kind of already worked the stuff out with the iTunes Music Store, and it's like a natural extrapolation to do movies. For backups, we should have been traveling the same road, but haven't been. Like it needs to be ambient, like Wi-Fi. Like Wi-Fi, wireless networking was a technology that nobody could use, and now everybody can use it. And how do we go from something that nobody uses to something that's like, oh, just every, coffee shops have Wi-Fi, everywhere has Wi-Fi. How do you get on the Wi-Fi? If you told somebody back in the early days of computer networking, the regular people were going to be able to walk into a building and get on the network, they're like, they can't get on the network. They need a network administrator to help them, and they're going to configure the network stack on their operating system. No, they're not going to do that. You work it out, and so until you get the system that people can use, and there's an investment in deep technology that Apple is not really doing, Google is kind of doing, that makes that possible, because it's not like one company came up with this wireless networking to spread everywhere. Like Wi-Fi and those Wi-Fi standards, that is deep, deep technology that you can't just like, well, we sort of came up with something in 6 months, and I think this is how we're going to do wireless networking. You have to have really smart people think about it for a long time and go through a standards process and get hardware vendors on board and revise over and over again. And then finally, eventually, 10, 15, 20 years later, you reach the promised land. You can't just say, well, we're going to do backups and we'll have there's some device out there and it will copy stuff and we'll make this photo stream service and we'll have iPhoto upload to it, so we'll have the iPhoto team work on it. Like, you got to think of it like as the overall problem and say, we need some sort of, tiered storage architecture that works on any device, and we're going to take the next 5 years to develop this architecture. We're going to start small, and we're going to, it's going to be like peer-to-peer between our devices, and it's also going to be, pushing things up to the highest level they can get, and encrypted and shared, and maybe we'll have a new file system of some kind mixed in there, so you could send efficient block diffs between. I don't even want to talk about it, but like that kind of like deep core technology, you got to work on that for years before you get any bang out of it. If you don't work on it, all you're going to have is these half-ass solutions that, like Marco said, you end up having edge cases that you think no one's going to be able to handle. Like, you can't just sit around waiting for magically for us to have gigabit upload bandwidth from everywhere into a magic cloud that, I guess maybe that will come eventually, but we're close enough now. Like, photos, I think, is the thing. You could handle people's photos. Maybe you can't handle their videos. Maybe their videos are still screwed on because they're just too darn big, and the ability to record video outpaced our other stuff. But I think, Apple and everybody else are dropping the ball on this, and we really need a solution. Like, with the hardware that's here, this stuff could work. We just don't have the software to do it, and that's a failure of the software guys, I think.
Well, I also wonder if we don't have the impetus to do it. What I mean by that is, I almost feel like we need computer hardware, specifically mass storage, to be less reliable in order to force regular people to care enough to demand these things.
Yeah, like that's work for Google, because they had so many servers that you just have to build expecting them to fail, and that's not the case with individual hardware.
Right, and it's like the argument that the only way we'll get more efficient cars is to make gas 4 times more expensive than it is. It's a similar thing where if hard drives failed constantly, then people would know, well, I'm going to need 4 copies of these pictures because I know 1 or 2 of the 4 are going to die in the next 6 months.
Yeah, we need personal chaos monkeys. You know about the chaos monkey?
Yeah, Netflix, right?
Yep,
yeah.
Yep.
Love that.
That's every company should have a chaos monkey, and I'm not sure if it's like if Netflix still does it, or it was a one-time thing, or it was a PR stunt, or they really have a thing like that. But yeah, for people who don't know, the chaos monkey is within Netflix, the idea that they have something intentionally going around screwing up their systems to test that their redundancies work. So they don't wait for things to fail. They have an active program or series of programs that go around and break stuff in their own data centers to prove to themselves that, okay, if this type of machine goes down, we're okay. If 3 of these go down, we're okay. If this switch dies, we're okay. And they're doing it to themselves intentionally all the time to sort of, build up their immune system. So if you had a person who came into your house at night and smashed one of your devices or randomly erased one of your hard drives, and the guy came once every 2 months, you would very quickly figure out some way. Either you would figure out some way to develop a system, or you would demand from all your vendors, look, Apple, the Chaos Monkey's coming to my house every night and destroying things. You guys got to come up with a better system to protect my data because I'm losing all the pictures of my baby. And that's where it's got to come from. It's got to come, from the consumers. That's what leadership is, I guess. It shouldn't have to come from the consumers. Apple should be leading here. They're in a position to do this type of thing. They should be thinking about it and doing it instead of being the putzes that they are that still make it impossible for one family to share a single iPhoto library like sane people want to do. All right? But they're not. So if it came from the other direction, that would really help as well. But as things stand, if your hard drive dies every 3 years, human memory is such that you'll be like, No, I think I might have had those on optical somewhere, or you just like give up and like, well, I think I posted most of those to Facebook, and I'll never look at them again. I don't know what's going to happen when all these people are like 80 years old, 50 years from now, and they want to see the picture of when their kid was 1 year old. Will they have them anymore? Because they won't have the physical photo albums that our parents did, right? Like if we go to our parents' house, we can look at those books.
Actually, that's a really good point, though. You're right that a lot, like I've heard from a lot of people who have lost phones or whatever. They say, oh well, we still have the ones we posted to Facebook. That's a very, very common reaction and kind of mental insurance policy for a lot of people. And I wonder, what happens like 20 years from now when Facebook shuts down.
Yeah, or like you have them on Facebook, but they're terrible quality because they're like recompressed.
Oh yeah,
tiny
they're very small.
And good luck finding them 30 years from now. If you can go back 30 years in time, it's not. I think I tweeted that 30 years ago.
Yeah, right. Well, the thing that stuns me is I'll have people, friends, relatives, acquaintances that will have catastrophic data loss, bad data loss, and you know what they do differently after that happens? Not a thing.
Because what can they do? What is their recourse? Like they're already buying like the best, quote unquote. They're buying Apple stuff, and they were using them in like the way they see them used in Apple commercials, and they still lost all their data. So like they don't have the tools to fix it. They shouldn't have to fix it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like Apple should be providing a way to make it as easy for them to have their data protected as it is for them to take their phone and do a coffee shop and get on the network.
Yeah, and I completely agree. But I guess what I'm driving at is it seems like the moment data loss happens, your average consumer says, yeah, I guess that's gone now. And that's that. And there's no more discussion. And
it's like a natural disaster. It's like, well, what can you do? There's an earthquake. Like, what can you do to prevent earthquakes? You can't, because to regular people, technology is basically just like, it's like the weather. Well, you can complain about it, but at a certain point, you're like, well, obviously this is unchangeable law of the universe that we're going to lose data.
Right. Well, because most people who are adults today have grown up having all sorts of computer failures. and most people don't use Macs, and even people who do use Macs still have failures. They just have, maybe fewer of them or different ones. But, so most people have grown up using some kind of crappy computers with crappy software, and, where things were very constrained and expensive and unreliable. And so almost everyone who's an adult today has at some point had a computer that had to be wiped, or that had a hard drive fail, or something. Somehow their computer was forced to be wiped and started over. So it's to them, it's like they're in like an abusive relationship with technology, where like they just like, well, yeah, okay, I guess that's just what happens with computers. Too bad, Like they don't know that it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, and I don't quite understand why Apple of all companies hasn't jumped on this more, because they're all about like figuring out what real people's problem are. That's why iOS and the iPad and stuff are so successful, because they had the vision of like, people hate that crap about installing and uninstalling stuff, and people hate trying to find software by doing a Google search and stuff. We just had one store, and you tap a button and the little icon appears, and if you don't like it, you put the little X and it goes away. That's what people want. And they did that. They did that great. They did everything about the iPad is so much better than the Mac in terms of, throwing it in front of someone who is not a technical person, saying, here, go nuts. They can browse the web, they can send email, they can play games, it's fun, it's exciting. They even lowered the price. It's cheaper than a Mac. But this whole thing about keeping your data, they still have all those commercials about, oh, look how beautiful it is when you take a picture of your children and all these memories, and you're having these happy times and laughing with your friends and making videos, and all that stuff is going to be gone, and start the clock, because they're not doing anything to help you like protect it long term. And maybe they think you're not supposed to protect it. Maybe you're just supposed to like enjoy it in the moment, look at it, and then let it disappear when you buy a new phone or you drop it in the ocean. But they don't mention that in the commercial. Like they don't show that experience of like, remember that time we went to Paris? Let's look at those pictures. Oh, that was 3 phones ago. I don't have those anymore.
We're running long. Should we be good?
One more thing. Is this really the kind of thing you'd think Apple would tackle? I mean, this is like a big web service, big data backend.
Well, maybe that's why they haven't been good at it. But like, I'm saying they're good at like saying, at looking beyond the way things are done now to do like Casey said, the 5 whys and get all the way down to the root problem. Is like, people don't want to deal with any of this stuff. Let's just solve their actual problem. Their actual problem is, I want to browse the web, I want to send email. And the iPad can let them do that without all sorts of complications and concepts that existed on the Mac that complicated that. They're good at cutting through that stuff. And so this is another case where well, backup is difficult, and we have all these problems, and how are we going to pay for this, and where are we going to store it, and maybe people don't have upload bandwidth, and they have caps or whatever, and well, like Time Machine was a good step in that direction, but that's a last century step, even though Time Machine wasn't the last century. Apple is the kind of company who has the margins and the control over hardware and software, and also usually the vision to not worry about the technical details and just figure out what people want and make it happen. That's why I think.
Yeah, but you're forgetting that so much of this hypothetically relies on really strong internet services, which we've all discussed ad nauseum. That is not Apple's thing.
I know, but they haven't really even attempted it. Like, it also depends on deep technology and core standards and building infrastructure, which Apple's also not good at, especially when it comes to data storage. So yes, this is in many of Apple's blind spots. But I feel like I would have rather seen them 3 years ago come out with Apple's new cloud file system. It's everywhere at once, and it would be a terrible product and not work. But at least they had the right idea of we are going to completely abstract storage on all levels and do this crazy multi-hierarchy thing, and understand it as a core OS feature, not as a GUI feature of a major version of iOS or OS X. It has to be a feature like the kernel or the file system. It has to be at that level or at the web service level. And they haven't even attempted that. They haven't made any run at it. PhotoStream is the closest they've come, and that's one little appendage hanging off a couple of applications on iOS and the Mac that's kind of weird, and you could only recently delete things from it, and no one understands how it works, and it's not clear to people what the mental model is, and it sure as hell doesn't apply to anything except for the photos that you manage from those particular applications. They're not even going for the big solution and failing. They're just maybe they know their limitations and are just we have to nibble at this from the edges. I don't know.
I still don't know what PhotoStream backs up and what it doesn't back up. So
just assume it backs up nothing.
Right.
That's what technical people do. I remember for 6 months, PhotoStream just showed me black rectangles in iPhoto. They were my photos because they were the right number, and I could tell from the orientations that they should have been my photos, but they were just completely black. I'm well,
nice.
not going to trust that.
Well, and then do you have the full resolution copies in PhotoStream, or does it have smaller resolution?
Don't even want to think about it.
It's so confusing. All right, let's wrap it up.
Now I think we're done.
Thanks a lot to our two sponsors this week, Warby Parker and Igloo Software, and we'll see you next week.
Now the show is over. They didn't even mean to begin, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. John didn't do any research. Marco and Casey wouldn't let him, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. And you can find the show notes at atp.fm. And if you're into Twitter, you can follow them at CASEYLISS. So that's Casey Liss, MARCOARMENT, Marco Arment, SIRAC, USA Syracuse. It's accidental. They didn't mean to. Accidental. Tech podcast so long.
Did you see this link someone posted? I'll put it again in the... I have so many Mavericks things to talk about, but I'll just wait. I'll just write it.
Iverix? What is this?
Let's scroll down. What do you think?
So for people who are actually listening to this, it's the Stu Does Design, which looks like Studios Design, but it's not. It's Stu Does Design OS X Iverix concept. And it's basically a iOS 7 style redesign of Mac OS X.
Yeah, this whole site should have a big banner on top that says, "Not this year."
Yeah.
I actually don't think it's terrible, although I feel like the menu bar is totally out of place given the rest of the screen.
Oh, Iverix. Thank you, Sam the Geek.
Oh, I wasn't looking at the
That
chat.
makes more sense for, Johnny
It does
Ive.
make-
Haha.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are parts about this I don't like, but overall, I think it looks fine. Do you think Apple will go in an iOS 7-like direction with...
I don't see why the Mac has to look anything like iOS. I can see it being redesigned, but I don't see any reason that it has to look anything like iOS. Did the Mac's buttons ever look like iOS's buttons? Maybe they came close at a certain point, but they weren't recessed like the iOS 6 buttons were with a little shadow on top of them. They were on top,
I mean, I would say that OS X never really looked that much like iOS and vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, you can redesign something. You don't have to redesign it to look exactly like your other thing. It can just be a fresh redesign.
But familiarity is never a bad thing, especially in UI design.
Yeah, that's true. I have a whole section in my review about that topic.
But you don't need. John Gruber wrote a nice big thing about this right before the iOS 7 unveiling at the keynote. It was like the night before, or 2 days before, something like that. About how people are trained on how to use interfaces these days, and you don't really need something to look exactly like a button for people to figure out that it's a button, stuff like that. And something like this, you don't need OS 10 to have the same visual style as iOS for people to know how to use it. Just give it similar behaviors, there are things you can click on that behave like buttons. There are labels. There are, lists and structures and, other ways to present data and to deal with it. You don't need it to look exactly the same. It can have its own totally different visual theme, and people will figure it out. I mean, look at how many people use Hot Dog Stand in Windows 3.1 and still figure out how to use it.
Yeah, that said, though, a straight-up, exactly iOS 7 style redesign of the OS 10 GUI, I think it would work fine. Because the iOS 7 style, there's not much to it.
Right.
Look at the notification thing where it's showing a notification dialog. You're like, yep, it's a notification dialog. It's got buttons. The iOS 7 conceit is that the buttons go edge to edge instead of being inset. But you can still tell they're buttons. It's fine. The window controls being the little outline circles instead of the other things. I mean, they're a little close together, but there's details.
Right.
But
nobody knows
you
what
look
those
at
do
it
anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't look crazy. It looks reasonable.
Look bad.
But I'm not saying I don't look at it and say, oh man, I can't wait for the Mac to look at that. I would like any kind of cool looking Mac redesign, but it doesn't have to be this.
All right, so even though it's only been 2 days, how's the review?
I wish the OS would work better so that I could review it.
That is the review.
That's the review.
I don't know what their schedule is like because they're putting out builds and things don't work. How can I write about them if they don't work?
Well, just see the iOS Beta 5. Every time you touch something, any touch interaction, running one of your own apps, it logs a debug message to the console that they left turned on.
Yeah, I saw a chalk solution.
Yeah.
Just increase the program counter. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, the solution is to patch over fprintf, so it doesn't. Obviously they're shipping these betas out on some kind of minimal testing or at least less testing schedule where they're if they ship that out, leaving this extremely common debug print statement in there that's annoying every single iOS developer this week. Obviously, what else are they leaving in there in these beta builds?
I think I told the story in Hypercritical once, but I had a Cisco VPN client downloaded from the official Cisco website, not a beta, not anything like that, on OS 10 that would log like a Base64 dump of the data it sends and receives, all the data it sends and receives. And so, I installed it, and I'm on the VPN, I'm doing things, and I hear my hard drive going tick, 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 and I look in the console log, I'm like, because this was before tons of memory and before syslog had changed to this database format anyway. And there was all the data. So it's when I'm connected to the VPN, it is going to just abuse my hard drive a tick at a time by writing out little bits of data that eventually gets flushed to disk. Yeah.
That's
things
awful.
People will ship. Who knows? But for Mavericks, I wanted to write about iBooks yesterday and today, but it is not in a state where I can use it to do things to write about. Today, I spent a long time trying to purchase a book. And it's just buggy. This is the very first, and how can I? So now I'm in this annoying, uncomfortable state where I'm terrified to make screenshots of anything because, should I go nuts making screenshots of everything now and then have to redo them all, or should I just wait until the very last minute and just do them in a scramble? I hate this time. So I'm going to say I'm 70% done with the writing, which is not 70% done with the production of this thing.
Naturally. Can we make the opening soundbite? I spent a lot of time trying to buy a book.
Yeah.
Just that.
No, it was not good.
Now, I have a very important question. Was Tiff listening live in another room and came running in at the 11th hour, or was she actually hearing only one side of the conversation in the office for the hour we spent before the Warby Parker spot?
Neither of those. When I knew the spot was coming up, I sent her a iMessage saying, "Come in now." Like I told her to expect it about 25 minutes in, and
How'd that
it was
work
about
out?
30 minutes in, so that was pretty good. So, yeah,
I thought it
guess
was a lot more than that.
no, it was like 30, 35, something like that. So I sent her a message saying, "Hey, come on in now." And a minute later, she was here. So she watched me listen to John for about 45 seconds, and then I passed it over to her. It was pretty easy.
Then that was all she could take.
Not true. Oh man, I've seen not a lot of feedback about the last episode since it's only been out for a few hours, but everyone has said, "Oh my God, Syracuse rant! I want it in my ears immediately."
See, that was like
Oh,
my
yeah.
I had mellowed. That was not ranty. That was like
It wasn't.
It was
like-
moderate rant.
yeah, it was like a wistfully looking back on a bad experience.
Wow. What's ranty like?
Ranty is when I talk about TiVo or file systems, probably. That was a good Edge Cases show. They did a whole show on file systems.
I haven't heard that yet. I everyone was mentioning you and linking to it and stuff. So I
Yeah,
wanted-
it covered a lot of the same ground, but then went forward more past what I had talked about when I talked about Hypercritical, because more things have transpired, although not much in the Apple world.
All right, what else is going on? Anything?
I don't know. We recorded the last episode like 2 days ago, so
know.
nothing's different now.
I know. Yeah, it's true.
Except somebody's going on vacation all next week.
I don't know who. Yeah, John.
No, not me. I'm all done. Back to the grind.
Yeah, so Erin doesn't know where we're going tomorrow. She knows we're going, but she doesn't know where.
That's,
We'll see
that's
how this
awesome.
works out. It should be fun, but we'll see how this works out. I'm a little scared. She's extremely easygoing, so it should be fine, but I'm a little scared.
I'm gonna get you guys back by not being here the entire fall. Like
What are you
all
going to
of,
be doing? What are you going to be doing? You have no job. You have nothing to do.
pretty much
except to-
almost every weekend in September or October, I'm doing something. Like it's crazy. Those months are insanely booked for me.
Well, we record on Wednesdays. It's fine.
I see no problem.
Yeah, the funny thing is,
Marcos-
I think I'm only gonna miss like one Wednesday. It's really not. It's gonna be like the easiest vacation schedule for this show ever. Although
Right.
it might be a problem if I'm trying to actually ship my app around that time, which I'm almost definitely not going to. But
So you don't think you're going to be there on day one?
I would give that like a 20% chance at this point, maybe even less. The more I do with it, the more I want to do with it, and I know I'm going to obviously have that problem of taking forever and never shipping version 1. But the bigger thing is I'm way behind on even getting the basics done, and some of it's going faster than I expected, some of it's going slower than I expected, and so I'm still too far out to say, whether I will be able to get out there for day one, like whether it's even going to be possible. But I'm guessing, looking at it now, it's not, because what if day one is like late September? That's what, 6 weeks away? I mean, it's pretty close,
Yeah.
Like that. I'm still working on the naming issue. I still don't have the company form because I'd like to give the company the same name as the product. Therefore I don't have like the stupid DUNS number yet, so I can't get the Apple developer account yet, so I can't get all my final certificates done, and it makes it hard to test things like push notifications, and there's like all these things that no matter how much I work my butt off right now, these things all take blocks of time that have to be done in a certain sequence. And so the reality of me getting this out there in any kind of shippable 1.0 state within 6 weeks is pretty much zero. Plus, you should probably submit it like 2 weeks before the actual release date of the OS, and that's assuming you get approved in the first
Yeah,
try.
it's more than 2 weeks. You got to assume it's going to be bounced back at least once.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, any new app, you got to assume you're going to be rejected. So, the chances of me getting it out there for iOS 7's release are pretty much nil. I mean, the app would have to be almost done right now for that. Like you'd have to have it pretty much ready to go, ready to be in the App Store on day one. You'd have to have all the code effectively done now. It would have to be in a very advanced beta. And if it's not in a very advanced beta today, you're probably not getting it out there for day one.
Yeah, that's fair. So when are you going to put it out, like March of next year then?
I'm shooting for fall as well, but, depending on whose definition of fall. Like, I want to get it out there for this fall. I don't know how realistic it'll be to hit any particular month. I'm thinking October, November is probably more reasonable.
Gotta have it there for the holidays. People get their new iPhones and iPads for Christmas. They can install your app.
Yeah, but you have a busy October for sure, because I'm involved with
I know.
half of your October.
So between September and October, I'm going to 2 conferences that are very far away each. I'm going to an anniversary trip because it's our 5th anniversary this year, and I'm going to our driving trip, which is going to be awesome. That's all. That's like, what was that? 4 major trips? Yeah, 4 major trips within 2 months.
Where are you going for your anniversary thing? Are you willing to share?
Upstate, a little resort that we like, but
Nice.
yeah, we went there on our wedding night. It's cute. So yeah, it's I'm cramming all this stuff in to that time, plus maintaining the blog, this show, and like the general like baseline workload that I have to do every week. It's going to be a rough fall, I think, or at least a rough early fall. By November or so, I should have an easier schedule, right in time for the holidays and all the family travel that goes along with that.
Well, I could help you out by just telling you, Marco, that actually you only have 5 vacation days left this year, so you'll have to adjust your plans to account for that.
Imagine if Marco had a real job job. Oh man.
I did a couple of times.
Yeah. Oh, now everyone's confused about what the driving thing is. I feel like we should just let them be confused.
Yeah, let them be confused. We'll take pictures and post them somewhere.
It involves driving. There's your hint.
Yeah, that's your big hint.
And John refused to come.
I didn't
John
refuse. I chose not to.
Don't even get me started about John.
There are items on either side of these things, and I weigh the pros and cons, and I make a decision. It is not a refusal to do an obviously good thing, nor is it a rejection of an obviously bad thing.
So angry at you, John. And I'm only slightly kidding.
Guess how many vacation days I have left this year?
Oh, after all I have booked, I only have 1. How many do you have?
Oh, not counting booked, but like actually, my wife just booked. I think the rest of my vacation days today. I think she just bought plane tickets, and so after she booked it, she said, "Okay, how many vacation days do you have left?" That really should have gone in the other order.
Wow, nice.
I believe I'm more or less booked up. I think I have to give myself like 2. Keep 2 in my back pocket for like one day this winter I'll be sick, and one day I may be panicked and have to take a day off work to do like emergency macOS 10 review scrambling. Hopefully I won't have to use that one.
Nice. Well, I'm still mad at you either way.
But then kids get sick, and then you have to stay home with the kids, and sometimes you can be working from home, and sometimes you can't, depending on how sick the kid is, and take them to the doctor, and yeah. Limited vacation days. It's like RTS, where you have limited resources. You can't just mine for more, though.
No, you cannot just mine for it.
We need more ore!
Yeah, we should do titles before I fall asleep.
Yeah, I like 3 phones ago. That's nice. It nicely encapsulates some of the themes that we talked about, and is kind of interesting.
That might be the nicest opinion you've ever had about a title.
Yeah, I mean, like that's what I'm always looking for in a title, is something that I can look at and remind me of what we like. The Thrustmaster one, I'm not sure if that will remind me of what we talked about in the previous show. Although I never had a Thrustmaster, but I wanted one. They were definitely very cool. But
well, the only reason I got it was because Dad decided he wanted one.
That's the secret.
And so, yeah, it wasn't mine, but I was the only one who used it. That was during the time that Dad loved getting us a random fun piece of electronics and thought he would use them, and then never did.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, I told this to my son explicitly. I said, "Look, the only reason you have all these video games is because I like playing video games. These are my games, and I let you play them. So if you really liked
awesome.
like the harmonica or something, like I'd get you a harmonica, but I wouldn't spend the amount of money. You know what I mean? Like, like you are getting the advantage of overlapping with my hobbies, and these are my game systems, and these are my games, and that's why you can't play a lot of them, because he keeps asking, like, he wants to play The Last of Us and stuff. I'm like, that's a grown-up game. Like, it's kind of sad, because you would think he's the kid who has everything. He gets every modern, as soon as Zelda comes out, he gets it. Every time the new Nintendo system comes out, he gets it. But they're not his; they're mine. He doesn't have anything. Oh, he's got every he's got every Lego known to man. I guess that he does have those. Those are his. But that's kind of because I want them too. And
Yeah, exactly. The truth comes out.
but they are his. The Legos are his. The video games are mine.